Good evening and welcome to CYC News for today, the 1st of September 2013, the 26th of Mesra, 1729 AM. I'm Samuel Michael.
And I'm Charlene Cáceres. In today's headlines, a delegation from the African Union visits His Holiness Pope Tawadros in Cairo. Pro-Morsi rallies in Egypt attract fewer numbers than hoped for. Obama to seek Congress vote on Syria's military action, and United States fast food workers go on strike over a pay dispute.
Starting with Egypt, where a visiting delegation from the African Union to His Holiness Pope Tawadros II of Alexandria has heard that what happened in Egypt was a popular revolution carried out by the Egyptian people, and that the military sided with the people. In a statement released on Friday, the church said, "We all support the efforts of the army and the police in maintaining the security of the country." On Thursday, His Holiness received a delegation from the African Union, headed by Alpha Omar Konar, former president of Mali, in the pontifical headquarters in St. Mark's Cathedral, Abbasiyya, in Cairo.
The delegation listened to the pontiff's view on the situation in Egypt, where he stressed the church support for the army and the police forces in the face of armed groups which practice violence and terrorism. The meeting was held under intense security measures surrounding the cathedral, given the repeated threats by the Muslim Brotherhood against Pope Tawadros II and the Copts.
And in the political situation in Egypt, hundreds of Egyptians protested in Cairo on Friday in support of ousted President Mohamed Morsi, far fewer than had been hoped for by the Islamist organizers, who had called for mass rallies. In the capital's Nasr City district, protesters marched, holding pictures of those killed in days of violent clashes with police last month during a security crackdown on the Islamist camps within the city. Protesters also held smaller rallies elsewhere, some descending into clashes with anti-Morsi protesters that left 2 people dead in the city of Port Said and the Nile Delta town of Zaazig.
Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, the main group organizing protests, has seemingly lost its ability to bring people out in large numbers due to sweeping arrests that have nettled its top leaders. At least 2,000 Islamists are arrested since mid-August. It's worth noting that the state of emergency continues in the country with a nightly curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
US President Barack Obama says the US should take military action against Syria. However, he will seek congressional authorization for intervention. The US says the Syrian government carried out chemical weapons attacks on the 21st of August, in which 1,429 people died. President Obama said the operation would be limited in duration and strong to deter future chemical attacks. Congress is not due to reconvene until the 9th of September, however. President Obama has today stated,
"After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets. This would not be an open-ended intervention. We would not put boots on the ground. Instead, our action would be designed to be limited in duration and scope. But I'm confident we can hold the Assad regime accountable for their use of chemical weapons, deter this kind of behavior, and degrade their capacity to carry it out. Our military has positioned assets in the region. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs has informed me that we are prepared to strike whenever we choose."
The Syrian government, meanwhile, denies it was behind the attacks and blames the rebel forces. United Nations inspectors who have been investigating the attacks arrived in the Netherlands on Saturday with samples from site visits, which will be tested in laboratories in Europe. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is overseeing the investigation, said the whole testing process could take up to 3 weeks, although every effort would be made to expedite it.
Over to the US, where fast food workers in dozens of cities are on strike in what could be one of the industry's largest walkouts. Workers want to be paid $15 an hour, double the current rate for many employees at fast food chains. In New York City, about 300 protesters flooded into a McDonald's restaurant near the Empire State Building. The strike comes amid calls by President Barack Obama and some lawmakers to raise the US minimum wage. Those members of Congress suggest bringing the current rate up to $9 an hour from $7.25, previously set in 2009. Labor Secretary Thomas Perez, who is taking a lead role in the Obama administration's minimum wage push, said for all too many people working minimum wage jobs, the rungs on the ladder of opportunity are feeling further and further apart. The walkouts at fast food chains in 60 cities include New York, Chicago, Detroit, Boston, Atlanta, Hartford, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, and St. Louis.
The Eurozone's unemployment rate remains steady as its record of 12.1% during July. However, the total number of people out of work in the 17-nation area fell slightly, by 15,000 to the figure of 19.23 million. This consecutive fall after a drop of 35,000 in June, adding to hopes of overall economic improvement in the Eurozone. In the wider European Union, the unemployment rate also remained unchanged at 11%. The Eurozone saw an overall growth of 0.3% for the second quarter of the year, ending an 18-month recession. Unemployment and signs of wider economic recovery are key political issues and provide the backdrop for next month's German election, in which Chancellor Angela Merkel is seeking a third term in office.
India's economy continues to slow down, according to the latest government figures. For the April to June quarter, it grew at a rate of 4.4% compared with the same period in the previous year. It was a weaker performance than most economists had been expecting, and was a slowdown from the first 3 months of the year, when rate of growth was 4.8%. A contraction in mining and manufacturing activity was behind the slowdown. Friday's figures show the economy is now expanding at the slowest rate since 2009. Chanjarit Banjeri, the Director General of the Confederation of Indian Industry, has said, "The economy needs the undivided attention of policymakers." It adds to the pressure of Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who earlier addressed Parliament over the nation's economic problems.
Australian federal opposition leader Tony Abbott has declared that he and his coalition colleagues are ready to govern as the election campaign enters its final week. The latest election poll published in national papers today shows the Liberal National Party on track for a comfortable win, leading Labor 53 to 47%. The opposition leader says if the coalition wins next Saturday's election, he is acutely conscious of the burden of duty and responsibility that will descend on his shoulders. Mr. Abbott also rejected Prime Minister Kevin Rudd's view that he does not have the temperament to handle complex foreign issues such as the Syrian crisis, saying that comment was a little beneath our Prime Minister, adding that it was an echo of what Paul Keating had said about John Howard ahead of the 1996 election, with which the coalition won a landslide.
Scientists believe they have figured out why it takes us so long to adapt when we travel to new time zones. Researchers at Oxford University say they have found the molecular breaks that prevent light resetting the body clock when we fly, causing jet lag. Experiments reported in the Cell Journal showed uncoupling these breaks in mice allowed them to rapidly adapt. Researchers hope the discovery will help find new drugs for jet lag and mental health treatments. The body clock keeps us in tune with the pattern of the day and night. It means we sleep at night, but also affects hunger, mood, and blood pressure. Light acts as a reset button to keep the clock to time, but when we fly around the world, it takes time for our body clocks to adjust. The resulting fatigue, which can last for days, is known as jet lag.
A study in the British Medical Journal suggests that eating more fruit, particularly blueberries, apples, and grapes, can be linked to a reduced risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Blueberries can cut the risk by 26%, compared with 2% for 3 servings of any whole fruit. But fruit juice did not appear to have the same effect. The research looked at the diet of more than 18,000 people in the US. But Diabetes UK said that the results of the study could be treated with caution. Researchers from the UK, the US and Singapore used data from 3 large studies of nurses and health professionals in the US to examine the link between fruit consumption and the risk of contracting type 2 diabetes. In these studies, 6.5% of participants developed type 2 diabetes. The studies used fluid frequently, questionnaires to follow up the participants every 4 years, and asking how often, on average, they ate the standard portion of each fruit. The fruits used in the study were grapes or raisins, peaches, plums or apricots, prunes, bananas, cantaloupe, apples or pears, oranges, grapefruits, strawberries, and blueberries.
Being poor can sap a person's mental resources. Research published in the journal Science suggests. The work, by an international team, demonstrates how poverty takes its toll on cognitive function, leaving less mental capacity for other tasks. The evidence comes from 2 studies carried out in India and the US. Previous data had shown a link between poverty and bad decision making, but the root causes of this correlation were unclear. The US, British and Canadian team tried to shed light on this chicken and egg puzzle by isolating the financial factor from others that might interfere with the results. One part of the study used the natural financial cycle, tied to the crop cycle, of surrogates farmers in India.
And that's all from CYC News today. Stay tuned for more Christian contents on CYC. I'm Charlene Castres.
And I'm Samuel Michael. From all of us here at the CYC studios in Sydney, we ask you to please pray for the situation in Egypt and in Syria. Good night, and God bless.